Now, Ron, back in, it was our fourth Venture Summit back in 2004. I moderated the panel called Is New York a Venture Capital? We had 6 New York venture funds on a panel, and it was a resounding New York's irrelevant. Go to 2012, you have some great companies, Foursquare, Tumblr, Paperless. You have a great General Assembly, which is one of the coolest, early stage, space sharing sites, around. You have West Coast companies coming to New York investors. We will hold a tech meetup, and 1,000 people will show up. You have a mayor of New York, Michael Bloomberg, who says New York's the technology capital of the world. How did that happen so quickly?
Well, first of all, I'm really glad that it's happening. New York is second only to Silicon Valley now in terms of venture capital raised by young companies, and so that's a good thing. And I think Boston is not in the picture, unfortunately for Boston, because the people that do graduate out of the great universities in and around Boston come to New York. And similarly, it's true for the people that are at CMU or Georgia Tech or the other schools that have great engineers. I think it happened for a couple of reasons. One, Google coming here in 2006 was a turning point in terms of critical mass of large numbers of engineers. And they came to the realization that great talent wants to stay where it wants to stay. Companies need to go where the talent is, not talent going to where the companies are. So that, I think, is possible today because there is a shortage of great engineers. So companies are willing to go wherever in the world the engineers exist. So I think New York, therefore, has earned its rightful place because lots of young people would love to live in New York, the energy of this place, the excitement that it generates. The second fact, I think, is a lot of people used to want to go be a quant in the hedge fund business if you were a great engineer. Now you could say, I want to go start my own company because it could potentially have an even bigger, better outcome than going to be a quant in a large financial institution. So that, I think, changed after 2008. And so I think more engineers that used to go practice IT in a large company are now prepared to, right out of school, go join a startup. And I think that's a change because the culture of risk-taking has taken deep root in New York, and people are willing to deal with failure. If you fail once or twice, it's a badge of honor. If you fail 3 or 4 times, maybe you should go work for that big IT company.
Yeah, so, as an investor, does it matter to you where your companies are located? Grant, you have invested in New York companies. Is location limiting? Clearly 10, 20 years ago, it was big, but how about now?
Well, location is less limiting today because of things like Skype, the ability to do multi-party conferencing with video, which allows you to even do design reviews on a product over the internet. So those things have collapsed distance a lot. I think the ability to share your files across the internet, things like Google Docs, which most companies or young startups shouldn't pay anybody any sort of taxes. So they should use products that are free. And as part of that, they're able to use things that allow collaboration across the country, across geographies even. Forget New York. I have companies in Bangalore that are essentially doing work for the global market. And that's possible today, wasn't possible even as late as 5 years ago.
And do you feel you're connected enough with the technology where you can provide that value add and you can be an assistance in the development of the company?
Well, to a large degree, yes, but for some things, there is no substitute to physical presence. And so you do want to be there to be able to directly advise the founders of the company on, for example, hiring is one of those decisions that are, to this day, I can still make mistakes because it's really hard to judge people as to whether they're the right DNA for your company, especially on the early founding team. Because you have a multiplier effect on those decisions. The early decisions you make in life in your company have a much bigger impact on your business than when you're larger. You can make the same mistake and they don't have as big of an impact. So when you're doing that, being physically present, helping you through those is much more valuable face-to-face than it is remotely.
Well, we've had, last night, by the way, I think, our firm was involved in the first pricing of a venture-backed tech IPO in the last 40 days since Facebook. Over the last year and a half, there was a lot built up about these high-profile technology companies, Zynga, Groupon, Pandora, Facebook going public. It seems like, the results were disappointing. What does that mean, and how does that impact the private world?
Yeah, good question. I think what has happened is there was a disconnect between the private market valuations and what the public markets are looking for. The public markets are looking for the more traditional metrics of success, which is show me top-line revenue growth, show me margin growth. Now, the private markets were going euphoric, especially in social media, over just user growth. So they just said, give me lots of user growth and I'm happy. And on that basis, large valuations were created in the private markets, which unfortunately were not holding up just as well in the public markets because of their desire for a different set of metrics, which is how they're going to be judging these companies. So I think that has been somewhat sorted out in the recent spate of IPOs that we've seen. And therefore, the private valuations have corrected down, which perhaps for those of you that are involved with young social media companies may be a disappointment, but I think it's the right thing, because what you don't want is a high valuation in your first round and then a down round later, because you want to be able to have a business model to go along with your user growth. And especially true if you're a mobile startup, because the ARPUs, or the revenue per user on mobile, is lower than it is on the web, and yet more users are always living on their mobile. So in fact, most companies, if you were to start today, would have a mobile first strategy.